Hello everybody, and welcome to a video covering the strongest items in Risk of Rain 2. I get questions about items all the time, especially on my stream at twitch.tv/WoolieGaming, with the most common questions being, what is the best item in X category, or what should I choose between X, Y, and Z? So the idea with this video is to hopefully iron those things out. But before I begin, note that the context of your run is what determines which items you should look for, print, take from a multi-shop, etc. Do not take the info here to be a golden rule of itemization in Risk of Rain 2, because after all, the items you receive are determined by RNGesus and nothing else. For all of the rarities, I'll start by listing the strong items, not the strongest, and briefly explain them. Then I'll talk about the strongest item. For the common rarity, the strong items are the soldier syringes, teddy bears, and goat hooves. Attack speed is essential on every run. Well, almost everyone, as it is a major factor in scaling your overall damage. The faster you can cast abilities and proc items, the higher your damage will be, obviously. However, syringe's importance is not critical to every run simply due to how many sources there are of attack speed. Their 15% increase doesn't scale that well when you add in the Zerker Pauldron with its 100%, the Warhorn with its 70%, and most importantly, Predatory Instincts with its scaling attack speed per crit. Once you factor in all of those, having a handful, anywhere from like 5 to 10 syringes, is more than enough to start ramping up your damage. Teddy bears are unique in the fact that they are the only source of outright preventing damage in the game. Strides of Heresy gives intangibility, yes, but if you are under a damage over time debuff, such as a burn or a bleed, you will still take damage inside of its effect. Teddy bears can completely mitigate damage. They are very powerful and a key factor in any run, but you know what's better than preventing damage? How about not getting hit in the first place? Goat hooves are the last honorable mention for the commons and definitely deserve their spot. Movement speed brings your overall survivability up tremendously in any situation, and goat hooves offer the most consistent form of mobility. I'd rather have a few hooves than a few energy drinks because there's no guarantee that I'm sprinting in literally every situation, even on survivors like Mercenary or Huntress that can attack while sprinting. Casting your other abilities will cancel, albeit briefly, your sprint, but even that split second where you lose the momentum can spell your end. This is where the goat hooves power lies. You will always have their increase to momentum, even in the stickiest of situations. Now for the strongest common item in the game, Lens Maker glasses. When you critically strike, you double your damage. Very simple concept. Everything can crit except for damage over time effects. And DOTs make up an insignificant portion of your overall DPS in any run that goes past the first loop. So this means you can basically think of a single pair of crit as 10% more damage. There are very few things in Risk of Rain 2 that increase all of your damage. Tonic, glass, and crits are the only three that I know of. Yes, there are other sources of crit, but not really, because they come from Predatory Instincts and Harvester's Sights, with each giving an invisible 5% extra crit chance. I say not really, because their 5% only apply a single time. If you have one Scythe and one Predatory, that is 10% extra crit chance, but adding more Scythes or Predatories will never change that. So glasses remain the only source to cap your crit in the game. Sorry, Ocular HUD. And thus, they deserve the spot as the strongest white item. It doesn't get much better than doubling all of your damage. Moving on to uncommon or green items, the honorable mentions have to be the I gotcha, the Harvester's Scythe, Ukulele, Will-o'-the-Wisp, and Wax Quell. First things first, some of you are probably wondering where the heck Kiaro's band is. Well, yeah, it's a good item, but its lack of proc coefficient makes it not that important of a pickup. Being able to proc other items is a key factor in all of the strongest on-hit items in the game. For Harvester's Scythes, 8 health on a crit is deceptively good. Remember how crit glasses are the strongest common item? Yeah, emphasis on common item, as in you're almost guaranteed to have at least a couple pairs of crit glasses and thus a reasonable overall crit chance at any point. Due to that reason and just the sheer number of hits and thus crits possible, Sights are the go-to healing source for every run. Unless you're the engineer, and then, well, you know. Ukuleles and Will-o'-the-Wisps are every survivor's solution to too many enemies on the screen, please help. No matter if you scale better with rapid hits or higher burst damage, ukuleles and wisps are always going to be your answers to any AoE problems you have. Lastly, there is nothing like getting your first stack of a Wax Quell in a run. Even on survivors that can hardly sprint while attacking, commando and multi, these things make a serious difference in your overall mobility and thus safety. Be careful not to pick up too many stacks, however, because past 3 or 4, you will be pushed forward such a large distance when jumping that it becomes more of an annoyance than a benefit. But for the strongest green item, we have a tie, the ATG missile launcher and the old guillotine. I couldn't pick one over the other for the simple reason that they are both incredibly incredibly powerful. The ATGs are by far the best on-hit items to get in the game, no questions asked. This is because they have a reasonable proc chance with great damage scaling and, most importantly, proc coefficient. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you should check out this video where I cover damage in Risk of Rain 2 in much detail as possible. The gist of proc coefficient is this: it determines how useful an item or ability is with other items. If something has a proc coefficient of 1.0, this means it will proc other items at their usual rate. So a 10% chance to fire an ATG or a 25% chance to use a ukulele. The lower the proc coefficient, the less likely the on-hit item is, with the lowest being 0, which is when nothing will ever proc off of that effect. This is the reason that ATG is so good. It has a 1.0 proc coefficient. Fireband has higher damage for the first few stacks, sure, but not only does the ATG beat it out in raw damage with more stacks, but Fireband also can never proc anything else due to having a proc coefficient of 0. Proc chains make up the vast majority of your damage in a run that goes past the first loop, and ATGs are one of the primary components in a proper chain. And the guillotine, man, I could not relegate this guy to the honorable mentions category because it is just too good the later your run goes. In fact, it is the only item in the game that is guaranteed to grow in power as time goes on, period. Other items require multiple stacks or other items to become stronger, not the guillotine. The execute threshold never grows weaker, and it actually does the direct opposite because enemies will only continue getting more and more HP. The guillotine does not care how much HP they have, it just executes them as soon as it hits the 20%, bam, they're done. Add in multiple stacks and the fact that tons of elites will start popping out the later your run goes, and the guillotine absolutely deserves its place next to the ATG. Moving on to boss items. Well, these are all kind of poopy butt for the same reason. They're too rare to reliably stack. In fact, most of the time you'll have maybe 1 or 2 yellows, that's it. And their effects aren't even that good on top of it all. But if I absolutely had to choose one, it would be the Genesis loop. Now, Irradiant Pearls are absolutely better than everything. No boss item even comes close, in fact, but they are so rare that they should not be expected in any run. If you find a pool and happen to hit the 4% chance to get an Irradiant Pearl and have a Lunar item that you want to lose, cool, take it. Otherwise, you are not going to be seeing them. Vagrant Weenies, on the other hand, these bad boys will plop out of the teleporter every so often and are actually a welcome sight. Think of their effect as a purely defensive mechanic, providing you with the same near-death explosion as the vagrants you fight. The 6,000% damage is plenty to wipe out anything less than a boss enemy, and if it crits or procs a few on-hits, it'll just clear your entire screen. Moving on to the Lunar items, not equipment, the 2 honorable mentions are Gesture of the Drowned and Transcendence. With Transcendence, it should only be taken when you are intentionally aiming for a high HP build and are okay with sacrificing your regular regen and leech to do so. If you want more HP, Transcendence is your best bet and is far better than the other HP sources like Infusions, Shield Gens, and Titanic Knurls. Don't confuse me to say that Transcendence is always a good item, because there are many situations where you should avoid shields, but rather if you want to get as much HP as possible, it is definitely the strongest item for that playstyle. Gesture of the Drowned, however, is just an all-around good item. Unlike Transcendence, there should be no thought process to picking up a gesture. If you see one and don't currently have one, pick it up. Easy. Most of the equipment in the game have no downside to being fired automatically, so the gesture ends up being a straight buff to them, and for the rest, it may be a mild inconvenience at most. But for the strongest Lunar item, it is definitely Shaped Glass. I'm not going to get into too much detail because I have an entire video already dedicated to this topic, but because of how one-shot protection works, having less HP is not nearly as bad a downside as you may expect. In fact, because all sources of leech in the game are flat values, the less HP you have, the more you are going to be healing. So having your HP can actually be a massive benefit to the run. And not to mention doubling your damage per stack. Yeah, Shaped Glass is a crazy powerful item. You may be saying, but if you have low HP and get hit by a burn or a bleed, you'll just die no matter how much leech you have. Well, then I guess you better kill everything before they kill you then, right? I mean, that's the entire point of the item. Just pick up 3 stacks and all of a sudden you've given yourself 8 times the damage to just obliterate everything in sight. Before I start talking about the legendary items, allow me to cover the equipment briefly. I'll just pool together the regular equipment and the Lunars in the same category because there's really only one good Lunar equipment and you all should know what it is. For the strong equipment, not the best, we have the Wood Sprite, Prion, Cube, and Elephant. Wood Sprite is great to pick up and forget about. The constant trickle of HP regen you receive is nice to have when you're taking the odd shot from an enemy, and if you get chunked too hard, the 10% heal from its active can end up saving you. If you don't need damage, Wood Sprite is always a great choice for the equipment slot. The Prion, despite having the longest cooldown of all equipment at 140 seconds, is still a monster at clearing out large groups of threats. If If you're getting swarmed, pop the Prayon and aim for the center of the threat. Once you get a few fuel cells especially, the Prayon is always going to be a strong option for quickly taking care of things. The cube is similar to the Prayon in that you use it to clear out groups of threats, but comes with the caveat of not dealing damage itself. Rather, you'll need a few stacks of Will-o'-the-Wisps or, a cliff to throw things off to take care of your threats. But there's no denying the power of the cube to stack things up and chain some massive wisp explosions. Finally, the elephant has grown on me a bit, mostly because of scavengers. I think it's self-explanatory when I say that scavs deal damage, a lot of damage. If they have just a single dot or on-kill effect, not to mention a good equipment and their thick web ability, when they throw out the big orange balls, they become highly dangerous. Not because of how high the initial hit of their damage is, but because of just how long their debuffs last. Like, holy moly, dude, their burns and bleeds last forever. Not to mention, if you find a scav with a missile launcher, Tesla coil, etc., they will just mess you up. This is where the elephant shines. If you foresee taking a ton of damage over the next few seconds, you pop the elephant and laugh in your almost 85% damage reduction. Not quite invulnerability, but definitely enough mitigation to prevent death in most situations. Now for the strongest equipment, a tie between the Royal Capacitor and Spinel Tonic. The Lunar drugs are potent. Very potent. Increased damage, attack speed, movement speed, health, just about every single positive buff you can think of, Tonic increases it. However, and let me stress this, using Tonic without permanent uptime, which is 1 gesture and 3 fuel cells, or 3 more gestures, is highly dangerous. The stacking debuff has a 20% chance of being given to you upon the Tonic's effect wearing out, and each stack of the debuff lowers those same stats I just talked about. Now, the debuff is temporarily paused when under the influence of the Tonic, so you don't need permanent uptime, say if you have a Soulbound Catalyst to lower its cooldown, but know that you are taking a very large risk because even just having a couple seconds of the debuff can and probably will end up ending your run, which is where the Capacitor comes in. It offers no downsides whatsoever and comes with the benefit of actually making use of multiple casts via fuel cells. Using multiple casts of a Tonic simply refreshes its duration and does not increase its effect. Capacitor, on the other hand, is able to shoot off more 3000% damage Zeus lightning bolts, and if paired with a gesture and Soulbound Catalyst, will be tossing out death to everything like it's nothing. The final category here are the legendary items. There are a lot of strong legendaries, so I'll just list them all and give a blanket statement on their power. Brainstalks, Behemoth, Daggers, Rejuvac, Disc, Hooks, Justice, Soulbound Catalyst, and Tesla Coil. Each of these items specialize in one specific thing, improving your abilities, healing, single target damage, AoE damage, or just all of your damage. They are each very powerful and always a welcome sight in any given run. Note that these items are not the only strong legendaries, just the ones that stand out from the rest of the crowd at the best in their specific category. But there is one legendary item that is undoubtedly the best. No matter what it is compared to, it will always come out on top, and that is the Chrono Bobble. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm just kidding. I got you again. Wow, you guys are so gullible. The 57 leaf clover. I mean, come on. Is there any really question? Does anyone that understands the clover really think that anything can come even close to the power it provides you? Not to mention that each clover will continue to cascade this enormous power further and further, re-rolling any item that has a chance-based effect, except teddy bears. In a game whose items are largely built around chance is the best effect that I can think of. Seriously, go on the wiki right now and scroll through every item in the game. Look at how many have a percent chance to do this or a percent chance of that happening. Not to mention that some on-hit items, such as the ATG, have proc coefficient, meaning they can proc other items, and the clover affects that too, and yeah, the clover is just insane. There should be absolutely no question that the 57 leaf clover is and probably always will be the best item in Risk of Rain 2. Do you have different thoughts? Want to tell me how the bobble is actually the best item in the game and I'm just a big dummy? Let me know with a like or dislike on the video and a comment below. You can check out my stream over at twitch.tv/Woolie Gaming and consider joining our Discord server for announcements when I go live on Twitch or upload a new video here on YouTube. Thank you for watching.